Listening skills are very, very important these days. Although we have been listening to our parents, teachers, and others outside for a very long time, we have to know that listening is also a skill which we need to hone daily, weekly, yearly, and forever. As learning goes on lifelong, we also have to improve listening skills continuously. And it is also important to be a good listener and to be perceived as one. So it's not enough if you think you are a good listener, you should also be recognized as a good listener by the speaker concerned. And we all know the difference between listening and hearing. Listening is very active process, and hearing is an involuntary activity. So in hearing, you listen, you hear some words spontaneously. You may not show much importance to the words spoken, but when it comes to listening, you should be all attentive. You should be all ears. Listening is a process of receiving and interpreting the spoken word. It involves recognizing what is said, understanding the matter, that is, understanding the main and subsidiary points, as well as the links between the different parts of speech. So the very process of listening includes four things. First, the listener hears sounds and focuses on them. So when I am speaking, you are listening to the syllables in my speech and also words. And the first stage, sensing what the speaker is saying. And next stage, encoding. I speak in English language. I am sending some message to you. And you are to decode or interpret the message. Encoding is the second stage. And then evaluation. The evaluation, you will listen to the entire lecture and evaluate what are the main points and what are not the main points, what are relevant points and what are not relevant points, what are facts and what are opinions, what are examples or what are ideas. So what you are going to do is to separate the grain from the chaff. Finally, the listener's response or reaction, that is the very important thing. That is very important thing. So all these stages are included in the listening process. The end stage is response. Unless you respond, I cannot consider I have successfully communicated to you. As in the case of communication process, right? There could be two people or more than two people in the listening process. Here I am speaking to all of you, and you are listening to my words, decoding those words, the meanings of those words, and you are evaluating, and also you are, I hope, ready for response. So in the listening activity, you have to note down listening is a very voluntary activity and requires conscious efforts, very active process, and it is a two-way interactive process. Usually we just hear, suppose you are on the radio platform, you hear many noises, but once you become alert, you can find out when is your train going to arrive. You have to be very, very careful not to miss the arrival of train or when you're airport, the arrival of the flight. So hearing is very involuntary, automatic process, and it happens very passively. So it is very much important to know that listening is a conscious activity which we have to develop in the course of time. If you go into epics, you find the epic Ramayana, right? Ravanasura. He was told by many of his courtiers, his wife, Mandodari, and his brothers, Vibhishana, to leave Sita. He just heard them, he did not listen to them. As a consequence, he had to wage a war with Rama and got killed. He got killed. Similarly, in the epic Mahabharata, we find Duryodhana, who occupied or who took away the kingdom of the Pandavas through gambling, and who sent them to the forest for exile. At the end of this epic, we find he was advised by many people. Krishna advised him at least to give 5 villages to the Pandavas, but Duryodhana just heard but not listened. So listening is an activity which involves focus and also the change in behavior. So any communication process is intended to change in behavior. If the change is not effected, we can consider the process is not successful. Now I will show you some slides. Through that I will navigate through this process of listening. I hope all of you will be very attentive. We go on with the process of listening. It completes the loop of oral communication. So unless listening takes place, the process of oral communication is not complete. And why do we listen? We have to listen to get more information, knowledge about the world and ourselves. So you have to keep your ears open so that you can listen, you can gain perception of the world, you can understand reality, and also you can know more about yourself and the society. And listening also helps decision making. You have to make some decisions individually or professionally. If you are not a good listener, if you don't consult your elders or well-wishers or experts in your field, you cannot take a proper decision. You cannot take a fruitful decision. And then listening also achieves goals individually and professionally. And in a teamwork also. Suppose you are a team leader and your team members come from various backgrounds and also disciplines. If you do not listen to them, you can't make them work to meet deadlines and also to do work on time. So in order to avoid problems at workplace and in order to be successful as a team leader, you have to develop this listening skill. You have to listen to their problems, you have to talk to them, you have to convince them. If they are anxious, you have to remove their anxiety. And if they are not well, and you have to inquire of their welfare. All these things are required in order to do your teamwork very successfully. Next, listening is also important in interpersonal relations. Whom do you consider as your best friend? Definitely a person who listens to you more. It is obvious, it is in our experience that, right, we love those people who listen to our hopes, fears, right, our feelings, frustrations and many things, and who advise us. Just a sympathetic care is whatever we want to have in times of distress, right? Even during the pandemic times, we are very much yearning for human company, but it is missing. But still, we talk to friends over phone. You have been attending these lectures, so communication is taking place, and also it has been helping interpersonal relations. Similarly, if you listen to others properly, you can help them. You can find out who are in distress. You can really help them, help those people who are in need. Depending on the listener's non-verbal communication, the speaker also can change his behavior. The speaker can find out whether the listeners are attentive or not, whether they are focused or not. Then he can continue his speech or not. This we have already looked at it. Hearing is not listening, right? So you will receive information, you have to be very attentive, and you have to maintain eye contact. Usually in interpersonal communication, eye contact is very important. Otherwise, the other party thinks you are not sincere or you are hiding something. And also by listening, you can use your background knowledge to understand the lecture, and also you can catch main points of listening to main points, and you can summarize them in your memory for a long time to come. At the end is the process of reaction or response. Then look at these occasions for listening. These are various occasions where you do listen to things. You attend classroom lectures or tutorials or seminars or workshops. Sometimes you have to give presentations and also listen to presentations given by other people. And then academic discussions you need to participate in. At times you will have to listen to pre-recorded talks. At the end of this speech or beginning, you will listen to some pre-recorded talks. I already sent 2 talks to you. One is by J.K. Rowling. Another talk is by speaker who spoke on nice guys finished last. And telephonic talks, news bulletins on TV and also on the radio, interview and group discussion. These are all various occasions where you have to showcase your listening skills or where you have to hone your listening skills. The next thing is types of listening. This is very, very important. I want all of you to follow these things. It often happens we ignore people. So a person comes and wishes you good morning, but you are in a hurry. So you don't listen to him at all. You ignore him totally. This is called superficial listening. Either you pay no attention to him or you ignore him mercilessly, which is not correct, which is not polite. So never ignore a person unless you are in a great hurry. Even then you can just take a few seconds to intimate why you have to attend to your task and why you can catch him up with later on. Next process, next is pretension. It is also considered one of the types of listening. Pretension is acting that often happens, right? We are involved in many other activities. Then we consider something is not important. We still go on smiling. That often happens in even physical classrooms, right? Or anywhere. So pretension means the speaker thinks the people are listening. Maybe it is not true. And appreciative listening is another thing that is not mentioned here. In appreciative listening, the main purpose is to get enjoyment and pleasure. You can listen to anecdotes, jokes, or songs, and the very purpose of this appreciative listening is to derive joy out of your listening activity. And then focus listening is very, very important. The focus listening, that is also not here, please note down. The focus listening, you listen for specific information. Whenever you watch news on the TV these days, what are you watching about? What are you watching for? You all want to know, right? How many people have been affected, or how many people have died due to COVID, all these things. But do not listen to such news very frequently. I want you to listen to more present things also. No doubt you have to get information about the disease affecting all of us, going disease affecting the world. At the same time, you also have to develop positive attitude and listen to those things which inspire you, or which improve your confidence, or which improve your optimism. So don't go on watching those statistics because we always identify, and it leads to some problems mentally. And also when you listen to read announcements on radio platform, definitely it is focused listening. And this attentive listening is very, very important. Attentive listening means, right, is paying complete attention to the speaker. For example, you are participating in group discussions or meetings or interviews, or you are listening to some telephonic calls. You are participating in telephonic calls, or even in you are receiving some instructions from your superiors or administration. In all these cases, you have to be very attentive. You have to listen totally. You have to listen comprehensively. You have to note down main points, subsidiary points, examples. So it requires total attention without any deviation. That is attentive listening. And selective listening is another type of listening. Here, what we do is we listen to what we like. Suppose somebody criticizes you. You don't like criticism. Not only you, nobody likes criticism, right? So definitely they play deaf ear to such kind of criticism. Suppose someone praises you, you are all ears. You want to hear more and more. That is natural. So selective listening involves something which you select to listen. In the process, you may ignore some things, but whenever you listen to classroom lectures or virtual lectures or any seminars or presentations, you have to be very, very attentive, but not simply selective. And another thing is empathetic listening is very, very important. There is a difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy means, right, experience with other person. Empathy is more than that. It is getting into the skin of others. What does it mean? It means imagining yourself in the condition of other people. These days, we also come across many videos put in WhatsApp, right, by many patients of COVID. They have been doing their best to enthuse other people not to become panic in case they are affected. When you are watching people who are in distress, you have to show this empathy. You have to see how they are suffering. And what you can do to remove that suffering. Why are they suffering? All these things you have to observe and then do whatever you can. And the next point here I want to make is, it is also the more important thing is, it's not enough to observe what the person is saying, how he is saying, that is also important. And if you want to be a good speaker, right, if you want a good listener, you also have to be if you want a good speaker, you should be also a good listener. It means to influence, risk being influenced. Don't try to influence other people in one way fashion. Influence other people and also allow yourself to get influenced by others. That is a two-way process. Next thing is listening effectively. How do we listen effectively? What are the things to be done? What are the do's? The first point which I want to make is listen with whole body. If someone comes to talk to you, if someone comes to give some information, do not neglect him. Don't be selective listen to the message, you give the impression you matter to me, you are important to me, your words are very important to me. So I will listen to whatever you say and try to understand and give proper response. This kind of impression you have to give to other party. Suppose you are in a presentation, you have to definitely give that impression to the speakers. And we also know the importance of non-verbal language. I hope you are also following non-verbal language. And because non-verbal language communication carries 70% of meaning, contrary to our common perception, only 30% of meaning is conveyed through words, whereas 70% of meaning is conveyed through non-verbal communication. So you have to observe tone, face, gestures, or posture of the speaker, and also his pauses, hesitations, and all these things, his stress, intonation, rhythm, all these things you have to observe in order to gain more out of your listening activity. Next thing is listening for meaning. All of us listen with a purpose. We don't listen just casually, particularly when we listen to some presentations, right? Lectures. Listening to classical music is quite different from listening to a lecture. People may listen for relaxation or entertainment, for getting information, or for solving problems, or discussion at a later stage. Okay, the main purpose is to get information. The other purposes like sometimes you want to know the introductory idea of an oral message, or you want to understand the main points. When you are listening to expert lectures, you want to know new changes and developments in your particular field. And sometimes we listen to TV debates. These are very important things. When you listen to debates, one good thing that can happen is it broadens your mind. You have some idea already, you have some bias already, but when you listen to various speakers, you can understand how other people express ideas. At the end of the debate or group panel discussion, you may change your ideas. It's not at all wrong. The final thing is you also listen to seek evidence for your viewpoint. But in a debate it happens, right? You listen to other party to know how you can gain more evidence to support your viewpoint or assess the value of the evidence given by other party. Okay, before going into this topic, I want to go back and just ask you a few questions so that I can find out whether you really understand or not. So I would like you to ask a few questions, please, right? Any one of you can answer. So here there are some statements. The process of decoding in listening takes place as soon as the message reaches the receiver. Is it true or false? The process of decoding in listening takes place as soon as the message reaches the receiver. True or false? You can give message. Any one of you. Correct. Very good. Right. Very good. Next, listening refers to the accurate perception of what is being said. Can anyone reply? Give message. Listening refers to the accurate perception of what is being said. True or false? Listening refers to the accurate perception of what is being said. Yes or no? Yes. True or false? Good. Right. Next. By receiving and interpreting the spoken word, the listener is not concerned with the message decoding. Is it effective? It is not effective listening. True or false? So if you are not decoding, if you are not concerned, that means you are not an effective listener. Okay, now I will go back to the presentation and find out, we can go on with the rest of the. Okay, there are some techniques to improve listening. These things you have to practice. It is not enough to know theory about communication skills or listening skills or speaking skills or writing skills. You have to practice every day, every week, every month, and even continuously. First, when you are listening to someone, if you do not understand, you ask for clarification. It holds good even for classroom lectures. Many times students hesitate to clarify their doubts. They don't approach lecturers, and as a result, the confusion will remain as it is. Or you can express your doubts later on. And everything is, while you are listening to a speech or lecture, you may come across some unknown words. don't get panic, don't get disturbed. You try to guess the meaning of the words from the context. That is true even for reading also. You are reading a passage, you come across some new words. What can you do? You have to try to guess the meaning of that word from context. But if you find that you cannot know the meaning of the word, definitely you can consult dictionary. That is the only way out, particularly when that word is a keyword. The next thing is enhance your vocabulary by watching channels such as BBC, CNN, NDTV, right? Or any other our favorite channel. So when you listen more, definitely you can improve your listening skills, vocabulary, pronunciation, and you will also improve the whole gamut of linguistic skills unconsciously. Many times speaking English or speaking language, right, it's not at all a conscious process. Your human mind is a supercomputer. So when you give at least 1 hour every day for watching these news channels for news, right, or for programs which you like, definitely you can find out some improvement in your language skills in the course of time. Make it a point, note it down, and practice it, right, faithfully. And other difficult situations. There are some situations, for example, the situation, pandemic situation is there. You can find out how difficult it is to listen. Still, you find many people roaming on the road as if they are not going to be affected at all. So they merely heard but not listened to the message given. So if you are really serious about understanding the message, you have to be very active, attentive, and listen to difficult situations. Then definitely, when some people are in problems, you have to listen to them, and you have to find out why they are these problems, and you have to take steps to solve those problems, whatever is within your reach. So you look around you and find people or other creatures which are suffering, which are in different situations, and try to find out their condition and try to empathize with them. And then take notes of everything. This is very, very important. When you are listening to some speech, usually we think, right, we can remember everything. It may be so in your case for most of the time, but suppose you are listening to your boss or superior, or listening to some expert lecture, you may not remember everything after the speech is over. It is quite possible that we forget a lot of it. It is said that after 24 hours, you forget even more than 50% of what you listened to. So if you take notes, definitely you can refer to those notes afterwards. You can recollect what is given to you. Particularly, we find politicians denying what they have said. A journalist interviews a politician, the latter says something, a journalist notes down sincerely, but when it appears in newspapers, the politician says, no, I have not said those words. This is really, right, how politicians who speak unfavorable words try to wriggle out of the situation. So even when you have a group discussion, take a notepad, note down what other person is saying, and then you can really note down main points, and you can develop your own points spontaneously or on the spot, and you can also respond properly. If you don't note down, you respond haphazardly or half-heartedly, so you cannot contribute effectively to group discussion. The next thing is very, very important. What happens is there is a difference between the pace at which the speaker speaks and the pace at which the listener listens. The pace of listening is 4 times more than the pace of the speaker. So if I speak 50 words or 100 words per minute, you can think about 400 words per minute. So there is a gap between thought and speech. How do you bridge this gap? It's very important that in case you want to remain an attentive listener, you can predict what I am going to say. You can predict my points, or you can predict my words or vocabulary which I am going to use. So you can capitalize on this gap between the pace at which the speaker speaks and the pace at which the listener goes on thinking. So you have to try to bridge the gap. Before, there are 2 more slides, right? Before going to them, I would ask you some questions, right? Before going back to next slide. Okay, I would ask you a few bits, so you please answer me. You listened about various types of listening: superficial listening, appreciative listening, focused listening, evaluative listening, attentive listening, and also empathetic listening. I will give an example. You have to give me the appropriate answer. Listening to a musical program. What type of listening does it come under? Can anyone answer? Listening to a musical program. Is it appreciative listening, or focused listening, or superficial listening? Listening to a musical program. I put a question to all of you. Very good, right? You answered properly. Next, listening to a frustrated colleague. What type of listening do you have to employ? Listening to a colleague who is in distress. No, it is not focused listening. It is right, empathic listening. Very good. Who says? There may be some confusion, right? As time goes on, you can also pick up. Next, listening to a speaker during a group discussion. Listening to a speaker during group discussion is called, does it come under? Yes, it is attentive listening. Group discussion, right? Attentive listening. Listening to a presentation, focus. Let me make it clear, right? Focus listening involves information for specific information. Sorry. So the reading, listening to radio, TV, or announcements, they come under focus listening, right? Attentive listening involves GD, meeting, interviews, telephonic calls, etc. Okay. Listening to a business presentation. Okay, you answered right my points. So you please remember those things. You may have to do right some homework after going back also. Suppose I give you I send you a speech, a TEDx speech. What does it come under? I want you to listen to it and understand the message and give a summary. What does it come under? Listening to a TED talk. Please evaluate. I want you to evaluate. I want to listen to a speech and evaluate it. Please find out the difference, right? Slight difference is there. Attentive listening means complete focus, complete attention. Focus listening means listening to what do you need for a specific time, a specific purpose. Evaluate listening means you will read, you will get the message, decode it, and evaluate the message, whether it is important or not, whether it is relevant or not. And you will separate facts from opinions. You will separate examples from main points. That is called evaluative listening. That is what you are going to do at the end of the lecture. Okay, when you listen to these words, certainly you can understand what the speaker is going to say, right? How do speakers, they use so many words, right? They use so many words or phrases in order to make their point clear. Just I want to mention some things which will help you. For example, someone introducing a topic, he will use the phrase like, today I would like to talk about, or what I am going to discuss is. So develop an idea, you would say, I would critically examine the situation, as you know that. To emphasize the point, you say, I am sure you will agree with me. I would like to emphasize. For example, there are words like in contrast, on the other hand, nevertheless. These words are used to, right, contrast two things. Similarly, you give examples. The expression, for example, is used to hint that he is going to give most important points. You say, right, my most important point is like this. And to examine cause and effect, he will use the phrase like therefore and because, etc. So, by looking for signal phrases, you can understand how the speaker has been going on. Before conclusion, you would like to say finally, or at the end, or in brief, in nutshell. So, you please look for these keywords. They give you understanding about how the speech is going on. You can really guess or predict things more effectively. The last thing is barriers, right? This is what I want to dwell on for some time to come. It's very important for all of you. First barrier is physical barrier, right? This is there. Now, definitely there is a physical barriers between you and me. We are not able to meet physically in a classroom, but we are, right, interacting through virtual classroom. We have overcome this barrier of physical distance through electronic media or social media or through use of mobile phones, right? We can certainly overcome physical barriers. But sometimes, right, when you are feeling uncomfortable, right, in a hot, under hot temperature, you may feel that you cannot concentrate. Some of you may have even barrier with regard to congenial place where you are sitting. So physical barrier definitely affects your focused listening or attentive listening, but you have to take steps to minimize them as far as possible. Next thing, age and attitude. These days you find parents saying, right, our children are not listening to us. Teachers also lamenting at times, right? The young people are like this, they do not have proper attitude. It is only generation gap. The present generation also experiences the same thing in earlier times. In fact, if you find the present generation, you can find them as morally, as more socially active. They are more techno-savvy, they are more socially conscious, but in a different way. They are more helpful. So generation gap has been there. So definitely that plays a role in widening the gap between the intelligent and present generation. Sometimes children also don't understand the right of the parents because the elders are not techno-savvy. The children want to dismiss any suggestion from their parents, which is not correct. Parents are well-wishers or teachers, which is not always correct. And attitude, you have to show, right, positive attitude. You should not put on airs. You should not suffer from any inferiority complex or superiority complex. Then you can certainly listen to other people. The next thing is prejudice. All of us have our own prejudices. Prejudice means judging beforehand, prejudice. A judge has to give judgment after listening to both parties. But when you are full of prejudice, you don't listen to both parties. You listen to only one party and say, right, he is right, other party is wrong. This closed mindset has to go. You have to be open-minded. When you are in a debate or group discussion, or even listening to a lecture, you have to be open-minded because there have a lot of debates going on. Private schools versus public or government schools. English medium versus Telugu medium. China products versus Indian products. So many controversies have been going on around us. Or English versus Hindi. Or North versus South. All these things are there. But if you are with prejudice, you cannot think impartially. You have to listen to all kinds of people and then you can come to your own conclusion. Next thing is language. Language also can act as a barrier. It is a very, very important barrier. I am speaking to in English so that you are able to follow me. In case I resort to French or Tamil, you may not follow, right? So common language is very important. English is one of the official languages. It is lingua franca, the language which we use for communication among different provinces of India. It is also a global language. Although globalization has taken a back seat, English will remain a global language for a long time to come. Next thing is the speech. If speaker uses difficult words or technical jargon, you cannot follow his ideas. And so you need to avoid linguistic barrier. One has to speak clearly, without ambiguous language, without using abstract words. Suppose I say the company has suffered, right, 20% loss. What the company has suffered a substantial loss. It makes no sense. Substantial means 10%, 20%, or 50%. So one has to use concrete words to give clarity. And also, when you are in doubt, you need to ask questions. You are not, of course, I'm not able to ask you questions, but I am able to ask you questions, but I'm not able to listen to your questions now. At the end, you may send your questions. And continuous evasion is another thing. What is evasion? Evasion means escapism. It happens always. It happens many times. Suppose you are listening to some lecture. It may not be from your domain, or it may be on some difficult topic. Then you will tend to give up very easy. That is not correct. The courageous listener will follow. The courageous listener will follow. He will not give up. But the lazy one will give up. He says, I can't understand. I can't follow. His accent is not right, good, or his language is not congenial to me. All these things can be said to avoid listening, or the subject is very complex. A writer, I remember Jack London, right? He wrote sorry, I'm not very sure, Jack London, How Fast. He wrote a novel called Freedom Road. You read that novel. In Freedom Road, that novel was written about civil war in America in 1860s. A black man who saw that civil war, Later, when the constitution was changed, he would go to parliament or their parliament and listen to the lecture on constitution very keenly. So there may be things which a person can understand, but you have to be very courageous. The next is continuous interruption. This is the habit of all of us. We want to interrupt other people continuously. If you watch our TV debates or debates on our TV channels, you can find how people interrupt one another continuously. They don't listen to other people completely. Particularly, I'm not biased against, I'm not boasting, but you can find a Republic TV channel. The anchor, always interrupts the speakers because he has his own frame of reference. He has his own ideas. So he just stops the other people in the middle and then gives his opinion. At the end, we know about what are the views of the experts because of noise made by the anchor. That should be avoided. When you are listening in an informal conversation, you should not interrupt the other speaker. Otherwise, you can't get what you need to get.